The thing that literally shocked me to my core was that the alcohol in your drink, in any type of drink, is the exact same type of ethanol that is going into your car.
On Connecting the Dots, we aim to redefine what the term healthy means by learning from experts, identifying different areas of our life that impact our well-being, and becoming our greatest health advocates.
We believe that by making small lifestyle changes, people can not only manage, but also prevent a wide range of chronic illnesses we are taught to believe are normal in our society today.
My name's Kathleen Carney. I'm a nutritionist, foodie, author, and creator and co-host of this raw, real, and sometimes ridiculous show.
And I'm Melissa Chamis, the other half of Connecting the Dots. I'm also a certified yoga instructor, Reiki 1 practitioner, and a hustler just trying to survive in corporate America.
We are close friends who bonded over our messy healing journeys and are eager to share our experiences with you.
So come join this journey with us as we all learn to connect the dots between the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual aspects of being human.
We now know that 80% of the reason why people go to the doctor's office is because of stress. It's a stress-induced illness.
So if we want to be working on healing the body, the gut and the brain have to be worked on together.
People get sick and tired of being sick and tired.
Never accept that, oh, I'm just always going to be this way, because there's always something you can do about it.
So make one lifestyle choice after another and do it with support.
The future of health looks like prevention.
It's going to be more common for everybody to have their own customized health plan.
Our health is no different than the health of the planet.
It's never too late to feel great.
The intention of this episode is to discuss rethinking drinking and the role alcohol plays in our society, as well as our lived experiences with alcohol. We are by no means experts in this area, so please take everything we say with a grain of salt. If you or a loved one suffers from a substance abuse issue, please seek help from a licensed professional. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Connecting the Dots. Today's episode is a little controversial, but also one of our most requested topics after season 1. For everyone who was on this journey with us last season, we sent out a survey to get some feedback and find out what you wanted to hear this year. And one of the biggest topics was alcohol alternatives or the best quality alcoholic beverages to drink. A lot of you, I think, realize that while alcohol can be so fun, it can also make us feel bad. And something that I feel like we just don't talk about enough is really, what does drinking in moderation mean? And what impact can alcohol actually have on our health? And so we wanted to have an expert on the show that could give us some of that science and research background, but also give us those fun and amazing alternatives, because we know that there are so many options for alcohol-free wine and mocktail recipes and herbs that can make us feel a little something, but not make us hungover. And so we really wanted to have an expert on the show that could tell us all about it.
Yeah, so Sarah Kate is a non-alcoholic drink sommelier. I think that's how you pronounce it. Not 100% sure. We'll go with that. She is the founding editor and publisher of somegoodcleanfun.com, which is her online alcohol-free lifestyle magazine. And it includes everything from mocktails to book recommendations. So we wanted this episode to come out in January, and I think it's an interesting time because I know a lot of people like to do Sober January as they're starting their whole New Year's resolutions. And for me, my first experience with testing out non-drinking was doing Whole30 the past few years in January. So it's an elimination diet, cut out a few things, but that also includes alcohol. And for me, having that, like, I'm doing a diet 30 days, that was just the easiest way for me to cut out alcohol and tell people I was doing that when I would go out. So that kind of introduced me to that whole world. Then earlier this year, as I've been going through this whole health healing journey with healing my gut, and that has to do with the liver and everything. And I've started to experience even just one drink will give me heartburn for 6 hours or will make me feel super shaky the next day. And it started to become so much less enjoyable. So as I've been healing, I've just decided to cut out alcohol altogether. And it's probably been about 7-8 months now. And it was definitely hard at first. And I think because we are still young and everyone is in that like party mode still, explaining to people why you're cutting things out is just, it's difficult. Like, yeah, for health reasons, then you feel like you have to go through this whole justification instead of just like saying, no, thank you. And it like learning that whole, the social aspects of that, I think is something that's not talked about enough. And I think Sarah Kate really does a good job of talking about different alternatives in this episode and different ways to still experience that fun and still experience that joy of like drinking or enjoying a non-alcoholic wine per se, but not having those detrimental effects that alcohol does have.
Yeah, she does. She does such a good job of breaking it down for listeners without it feeling lame. Because I think that's what a lot of people are worried about, or like they think, oh, if I'm not drinking, I'm not going to have fun, or I'm going to be boring, or people aren't going to want to invite me to stuff. I know I had all of those fears when I did my gut and liver and skin program through Katie Stewart Wellness. Similar to Melissa, part of that program was not drinking. And it came at a time in my life where I was going on a bachelorette or a wedding or to some type of social event pretty much every weekend. And I was just nervous that people weren't going to think that I was fun, or I was nervous that I wasn't going to be fun. Like, was my personality going to change? And I actually found out that I had so much more fun because I remembered everything that I did. I didn't wake up being like, oh my gosh, what did I say? What did I do? And I also got to be around people who were drinking. So I still kind of felt unhinged, if that makes any sense. Like, I didn't feel like I was like at work. I was at a club. So I was dancing and acting like I was at a club. It was just, it wasn't a big deal. And it really made me think about why we put so much pressure on ourselves to get drunk and to feel like the goal of the night is to get drunk versus the goal of the night is to celebrate, or the goal of the night is to catch up with old friends, or the goal is to literally just dance and have fun. But so many of the times, especially in pregame culture, which Melissa and I are all too familiar with going to University of Maryland. No shade on the university. It's amazing, but that was just part of our culture. Maybe it was just Greek life, but it was just what you did. Like, you had a pregame before anything because getting drunk was the goal, was the purpose. And it kind of just impacts how you view social gatherings, in how you feel like you can show up and behave. And it's just wild. I mean, it wasn't just college for me, honestly. Once I was a junior and senior in high school, it felt like doing anything with your friends on the weekend. The goal was like, whose house can we go to and where can we find some alcohol, which is crazy. It's insane, but that's just like what people were doing. And so it's been really eye-opening, and been so much growth has happened this year as I have started to rethink drinking and rethink how I show up and what my goals are going out.
Yeah, well, it's funny that you say like you still feel unhinged, because I always say like the good thing about going out with people who, I mean, still like drinking too, and if I'm sober, I could just act as weird as I want and people still think I'm drunk. Like, they don't need to know. Like, who knows? Like, that's just me. But yeah, like this year, what was, I think was one of the hardest things was going back to homecoming this year and not drinking and realizing all the things that we did drunk, we would go to a frat to pregame before, and then we go to a tailgate, and then we would go to the bar, and then we would go to another bar, and going from place to place and walking around campus and everything. I was just like, I don't remember how long these walks were. I must have been very drunk for that, or like it was just very weird experiencing it all sober, but it was also really nice and like heartwarming getting to walk around campus and really just like see everything, like more nostalgic per se, and then actually getting to catch up with people who I haven't seen, like talk to them instead of just, again, taking shots with them and stuff. So it was nice. It was very weird, but it was also very like comforting at the same time and nostalgic, and I was happy afterwards. Like I still had a ton of fun, and everyone fully understands why I wasn't drinking, and it's gotten to the point where a lot of my friends already know, so they're like, oh no, she's not drinking, you don't need to buy her a drink, or don't pressure her, which for me I think is super important. I think that's also like, if you are on that journey of exploring not drinking and everything, don't let other people like convince you otherwise, and your friends will respect it. And if they don't, maybe it's time to start questioning what kind of friends you have, because even, you'd be surprised, even some of the craziest ones will understand.
Oh yeah. My parents always, after I'd come back from a bachelorette or a wedding or something, they'd be like, oh, how was it? And I'm like, it was great. Like everyone was great. Everyone understood. Everyone was supporting my health journey. But similar to what you said before, Melissa, I have felt the need to like over explain myself. And I also think that comes with, being a woman of fertile age, of like also having to be like, I'm not drinking, I'm not pregnant, I'm okay, but I just am trying to heal. Or now that I've done that and I've been exploring this relationship to alcohol, and it's been one of the topics that I've been bringing up with my holistic health practitioner who does NET. Like I've really been trying to process the guilt that I've felt around drinking alcohol as I've started to introduce it back, like even having like one or two drinks and waking up the next day with that like weird feeling. And I'm like, I wasn't even buzzed. Like, why am I waking up with this like rock in my chest? And, it's really come back to, it's not about the alcohol. It's about the things that I've done under the influence that sober me would never do. And like really trying to reflect and say, it's okay, like heal from that and be like, it's okay. Like you make mistakes, everyone makes mistakes, but like, what did we learn and how can we grow? And something that I think that I've just come to this realization is that I can drink alcohol and I can enjoy it, but only when I'm having one or two drinks. And that's just where I live. I don't really feel buzzed. I don't do anything dumb. And like, I can live without feeling that like guilt or fear that I'm going to mess up. And I don't know. We've talked about it because I've talked about this to my dad a lot too, is because I feel like once I reach a certain point of drunk, there's like no off switch. Like my brain isn't like a normal person's where it's like, oh, you're drunk, you're good, you're feeling buzzed, like now's the time to pump the brakes, you don't need another drink. My brain's the opposite. It's like, oh, you're drunk, let's order 2 rounds of shots for everybody and like put ourselves into a blackout hole. And I've just realized like I do not want to live in that space. I don't want to go back there. And that 1 to 2, maybe 3 drinks, if it's like over a really long period of time, like I never get to that place of like, okay, let's keep going and keep going, keep going. Like I understand that there's a limit and the limit does exist. And that has taken so much reflection and trial and error and thought, because what wasn't working was me just being like, oh, I'm not going to drink a lot. And then waking up the next day and being like, whoa, like, I needed to put a plan into action there.
Yeah, and I think it's funny. I do have to mention, no one asks me if I'm pregnant because they know I'm very single. I think that's more of a you in relationship situation. That is true. That's a good point. People might think. Never had that thought though. But I think something we don't talk about is like drinking in moderation. Like no one teaches us how to drink in moderation. They're just like, don't drink. Or they're like, okay, let's get drunk. There's no happy medium. And like in the future, hopefully, like right now I'm not drinking. Hopefully I will be able to have like 1 or 2 drinks and truly just enjoy it. And I think like what I learned studying abroad was how to actually enjoy alcohol, how to like appreciate wines. And I never liked beer before then, but actually going to different breweries abroad, and you know, abroad technically they have a lot better quality alcohol too. That might have a little bit, play a little role in that. But I think one of the things that we do here that other countries don't is we have that restrictive culture. So people feel the need once they do have that freedom and that ability to drink, they just push it to the limits instead of just accepting like, oh, I'm going to have a drink with dinner. Oh, I'm going to enjoy this. I'm going to go to a vineyard or a brewery, or I'm going to go out with my friends and actually just enjoy my time instead of I'm going to get shit faced.
Yeah. And that's like I said, that was just like the goal. Like it was just like, if you're not ripping shots before you go out, like, what are you doing? And yeah, my mind has just completely changed. I think it's been evolving over a few years as I've gotten older and the hangovers have gotten worse and the stakes are a little bit higher of like the things that you can fuck up for yourself.
Yes, they are.
But I've just realized that I need to change the narrative around what is the goal. And exactly like you said, like, I don't want to give up wine because I love a good glass of red wine with a meal, or I love a champagne toast for a celebration. Like, I don't want to give up those moments, but I do want to give up so many other parts that come with drinking. And that's just kind of what I've had to figure out and yeah, explore for myself. And so I'm really glad that I've had you on this journey. And I'm so glad that we have resources like Some Good Clean Fun and the resource guide for this episode, which is going to be chock full of so many alcohol alternatives, mocktail recipes, just so many resources that you can take away from this episode, no matter where you are on that spectrum. Are you just like, okay, yeah, it's kind of insane that the goal of my night is like, how drunk can I get? Or I'm like, okay, I'm really ready to rethink this and not have my life revolve around alcohol anymore.
Yeah, and I think it's not, we're not saying give up alcohol right away. We're not saying it's bad for you. I mean, there definitely are its downsides, but obviously it has its role in everyone's life for different reasons. We're just saying to really take a good look at what that reason is for you, like why you do drink, why you do go to grab, like when you go out, like what is your relationship with alcohol? And if you heard that sound bit before the intro, you will be just as surprised as we were to find out that alcohol is the same chemical makeup as the ethanol and gas we put in our car. So when we think about hangovers and the goals of getting drunk, it's almost like we're poisoning our body to maybe have some fun. And when you start thinking about it like that, and then you start really feeling those hangovers and feeling the negative effects, God bless y'all that still don't have hangovers. I wish I was like that, but it kind of just causes us, to rethink drinking. So I hope y'all enjoy this episode, and please just take whatever resonates with you and then forget what doesn't.
Thank you so much, Sarah, for being on Connecting the Dots today. We are so excited to talk more about you and your magazine and all the wonderful things that you do. But before we jump in, would love to ask you our icebreaker question, which is, what is something that you're reading, watching, or listening to?
So I love kind of like the classic amateur sleuth whodunits. I know that's so random, but I've loved mystery novels all my life. I'm a huge Agatha Christie fan. And I just found this amazing series by this fellow Vasim Khan. And it's the first female detective in India after partition, in Mumbai after partition. Well, it was called Bombay actually. So it was like the 1949, 1950. This takes place, and so there's two books, and I just literally like read them so fast I couldn't put them down. They were like so interesting because you get a really good perspective on what it's like to be a female in India, but also a female career woman, and also in the police force, which is a very male dominated industry everywhere in the world. So, and there's a mystery, and it's so neat, such a neat series of books.
Cool. We'll have to check them out.
Yeah, that sounds fascinating. All right. So can you start by telling us a little bit about yourself and your health journey and how that led you to where you are today?
Yeah, so I have two kids, and I'm in my mid 40s now, and for most of my life I had been one of those people who I loved to try and stay healthy. I ate my salads. My weight went up and down all the time. I was always kind of not struggling, I would say, but I was always health conscious. I was a long distance runner. I've been a runner my whole life, or was a runner. That's a whole other story why I'm not running right now. But but on the flip side of that, I also really loved to drink. So I would always tell myself at the back of my head, in the back of my mind, this is too much, or you drank too much. And when I was in my 20s, it was fine to go to a bar on St. Patrick's Day at 2 o'clock p.m. and stay until 2 or 3 a.m. Right. And who knows how many drinks I had, but there was never it was never people just, that's what you do. You go to the bar. But it took me a while before I realized I was always the one pushing people to go early and always the last one. I was the one who never wanted to leave. I always wanted to stay at the bar. And my husband, who's my boyfriend at the time, would always get so mad because he would want to go home, and he wasn't that heavy of a drinker. And I would be like, one more drink, let's go. Cringe, right? Like super cringe all the time. And it wasn't until I really I had a couple of blackout, not a lot. I'd say I can count on both hands the number of times I've been blackout drunk, passed out on my bathroom floor. But that behavior stops when you have or you think it's going to stop when you have kids. You get pregnant, you think, oh, I've given up alcohol for 9 months. I don't have a problem. There's nothing wrong with me. But then you get sucked into the mommy wine culture. So I had already really liked drinking. And then I started realizing that that my daily glass of wine was turning into 2, which was turning into 3. And then on the weekends, I was like, it's the weekend, time for a whole bottle. Right. And yeah, so I just, long story short, without getting into all the details, I knew it wasn't healthy. There was a voice at the back of my head saying, this is really not healthy. You're a runner, you're health conscious. And we can get into the details more later, but I was like, this is it. It's time to stop. And that has resulted in this amazing 2 years of self-reflection, healing, joy, and lots of dark times too. But for the most part, I'm happy. I've never regretted making that choice.
That is so awesome. And I feel like, when you're describing being in your 20s, I've been doing a gut detox, which has involved not drinking for the last 3 months. And I've been on bachelorettes and on wedding weekends and the 4th of July. And it's those day-long drinking events are the times where I'm just whoa. I used to be absolutely hammered by 2 p.m. And here I am just bopping around, enjoying my time. So I've had a lot of the same reflections as I think you've had in the past, of just the way that I've been probably is not the healthiest. I'm curious, what was your next step? I know you've been thinking about it, realizing, maybe this isn't the best, but when you decided, okay, I think it's time for me to cut back or stop drinking. Like, what was the first thing that you did to support yourself?
So this is I'll try and make this short. It's a bit of a funny story. So I had this idea that if I counted the drinks that I had, it would make me more accountable. So it was more like I have to stop. So the way to do that is to cut back on volume, right? And so to slowly wean myself off. So I downloaded this app called Drinks Tracker, like as if I needed help counting my daily glasses of wine. Like when you drink 2 or 3 glasses of wine a day, you're having that much, and you're binging on the weekend. And it was just hurting me because I was going back and looking and like, oh my God, I went 3 days without having a glass of wine, and then I had 7. Not really, but like I had a lot more than I wanted to. So it would make, long story short, there was like in this app, they connect you with other people. And I'm not usually one of those people to like chime in on community chats in that sense with these strangers, but I was listening and observing the chat, then started weighing in a bit. And somebody said in the chat that they had been dry for 30 days, and everybody's like, how did you do it? And he's like, well, I read this book called This Naked Mind. And that was literally probably the luckiest thing that has ever happened to me in my entire life, that I happened to be in the chat at that moment to hear that, because I was like, oh, what's that? And then I looked into it. I love reading, and I love science-backed information. So I didn't resonate with and your original question was, what was your first step? And I'm going to say right now, I didn't go to AA. And a lot of people fear this idea that they might have a problem because they think that the next step is AA. And I have to tell people who are listening right now, don't be afraid to question your relationship with alcohol, because AA is not the next step for everybody, right? Some people may really need AA, but I didn't feel that didn't align with me and it didn't feel right. And so not that AA isn't science backed, but I needed some science backed information. And that's what helped me. And This Naked Mind is very scientific, but it's also, it gets you thinking about the role of alcohol in our culture. And that's what it was. That's what clinched it for me, was really understanding how we are impacted internally, how we see alcohol through our whole lives, which is what leads us to normalize it from when we're teenagers to problems in controlling it in adulthood. So that's kind of my journey, or not my journey. That's kind of like, not my journey. That was sort of the first step.
That's very interesting. I wrote that down because I do want to buy it. And similar to Kath, I haven't drank in a little over 4 months because I've been also on this healing journey, healing my gut and liver and everything. And it just puts that added tax on your body, and certain alcohols have just been bothering me. I'm like, it's not worth it to just have one drink and then feel sick. It's like, it's not fun anymore. But I'm curious if you could maybe talk about some of those things that you've learned, like throughout this time period of you stopping drinking, and from this book, like how does it impact us internally, either physically, emotionally, mentally?
There are so many, that is like, I could talk for hours and hours about that. So I'll try and keep it to like the things that really impacted me, like, and understanding. So without getting into like scientific and medical things, and, without having the book in front of me, the first thing that really shocked me was that when you have a drink of wine, when you have a glass of wine, your body starts to produce dopamine. Everybody sort of knows that. That's the feel good effect that you have. What I learned from This Naked Mind is that your body gets this surge of dopamine, but everybody's body, the purpose of our body and our physiology is to maintain homeostasis. And that's why we have all these things, because they're all health issues are often reactions to other things, or you cut yourself and then or you get a mosquito bite and it swells, or you hit yourself on something and you get a bruise, which is inflammation, which is your body trying to protect itself. So that's all like homeostasis. Your body wants homeostasis. So when your brain is flooded with dopamine artificially through alcohol going into your system, your body wants to maintain homeostasis, so then it floods your body with cortisol, which is a stress hormone, which is like one of the main reasons why you drink. People think they are going to reduce their stress and anxiety by drinking. And so you get the proof point. When you drink your first drink, you get the proof point. I feel good. But then your body is like, you don't know this, but your body is trying to maintain homeostasis, and it drops your dopamine levels below where you started. So then all of a sudden, you've got to drink more to get your dopamine up to the level that it was at before, right? And your body in the meantime, is getting cortisol. I hope that if there are medical doctors listening right now, please correct me if I'm wrong, because I am not a doctor. I'm not a health practitioner. This is my basic understanding. But that there's something called dynorphin, and I don't want to even try and explain what that is, but that's what leads to the cortisol and all that, so this imbalance happening. So that was the number one myth, or the first thing that I was like, whoa. So when I'm not feeling happier at 11 o'clock at night after having 3 glasses of wine, we should, I don't know if this is the same for everyone, but after 2 or 3 glasses of wine, depending on what mood I'm in, I can sometimes get weepy. I don't feel, or I wake up in the morning and I don't feel good about myself. It's because of all the physical and chemical reactions happening in your body that we're not paying attention to, and we haven't been told at an early age. The reason why you have this this feeling when you're hungover, and self-loathing and all these things that happen, and anxiety and like hangxiety, they call it, is because of all the chemical imbalances that are happening in your body because you've flooded your body with alcohol. So I sometimes wish I had known this earlier. I get really upset that they don't teach this to us, the proper physiology of alcohol in your body when you're young. All we hear is don't do drugs because like it's going to make your brain like an egg. Right?
Yeah.
Like I grew up with like the war on drugs and don't do drugs, and it makes your brain like scrambled eggs or whatever. And they don't talk about the fact that alcohol is a drug. It's not actually categorized as a drug. Like technically it is a drug, but it's normalized. So sorry, and I've sort of like taken us off path a bit, but I think to answer your question, the first thing that I learned was like, it's all a lie about it making you feel better, because it actually doesn't. It makes you feel worse in the long run because of the chemical reactions. The second thing that I learned, about physically that shocked me was how your body metabolizes alcohol. And as a healthy woman, I wanted to, I wanted to live my best life. And I was always drinking green smoothies and trying all these, these different like potions. And I've done every diet: South Beach, Scarsdale, Atkins, paleo. I've tried them all. Not everything works for me for digestive reasons, which, Melissa, I think you could probably understand if you've got digestive issues, Some diets just don't work. Like you can't do it. But what I learned was that your body actually uses alcohol first over all the other things in your body. So if you've had 6 pieces of pizza and you've had 6 glasses of wine, or 2 glasses of wine, not 6. Why did I say that? But 2 glasses of wine with your pizza, that's 250 calories, right? And your body is going to burn that 250 calories first of that alcohol, of that ethanol. Then it'll start working on the pizza. So if you've had a healthy salad for dinner, and then you've had 2 glasses of wine and you feel snacky and you go and have all those chips that I get 10:30 at night, I'd open a bag of Crispers and eat half the bag. That was the wine is being burned first. Your body has to metabolize the wine before it can metabolize the chips. So that was the second thing. And actually, I just said something that I think is important. And sorry, I hope that I'm not talking too much here. Okay. I just said the word ethanol, and I have to tell you an interesting story. This is really important. This is actually the key thing I learned, and those other 2 things are sort of lower on the totem pole. The thing that literally shocked me to my core was that the alcohol drinking, its chemical name is ethanol, and it's the exact same thing, the exact same chemical makeup, like the actual structure chemically of the ethanol you put in your car. It's exactly the same thing. So my husband didn't believe me, and he had to look it up. He didn't believe me. He's like, "You're wrong." I'm like, "No, the alcohol in your drink, in any type of drink, is the exact same type of ethanol that is going into your car." That was the most shocking thing. I literally had to put the book down and I almost started crying because I couldn't believe that I'd been poisoning myself. And those are the things that turned me around. It wasn't like, I have to stop drinking. I have to, there's something wrong with me. I have to use willpower. It was, and sure, it was actually tough to not drink, but I was armed with the understanding first of what it was doing to me from a health perspective, from, my mental health, my physical health, and learning those things. You can't unknow it. Once you know that you're drinking gasoline, you can't unknow it. You're not really drinking gasoline. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said that, but like, you're drinking a chemical that can fuel your car, right? You can't unknow that. And those were the things, some of the key things that like just blew me away and really changed my perspective on our culture and ourselves. So from a high level and from a personal level, what needs to change?
I've resonated with so much that you said, but first of all, I'm just shocked by all of those facts that you just threw at us because I did not know any of them. And I was just, thinking about your story and how you started off talking about, your direction. And I've had this conversation with a lot of people of like, I don't know if it's like a problem that I have or if it's just, society and culture and the way that like we've kind of just gotten used to doing certain things certain ways. And so I really like how you explained like it wasn't necessarily me being like, okay, yes, I need to go admit this problem and do these 12 steps and whatever. But it was also like, I do realize that this isn't healthy and like let me help understand that because I think that resonates a lot with me and that's kind of how I've been motivating myself throughout this healing journey of just knowing that like one drink is considered in moderation for women and no one talks about that either. Even in high school and college when we took those classes like you were saying what we learned in school, we learned like what was considered a serving. Like one can of beer is like one cup is
At least you learned that. Like I have to say, like that's great. I'm in Canada.
Yeah.
We never, like that would never have been included in the curriculum at all. I don't think I even knew that what a serving was. And you made a point there about one a day. They have now said that 0 glasses of alcohol a day is the only safe way. The only safe level of drinking is 0. So they used to say that 1 a day for women was like considered okay and healthy. All of the health, bodies out there are all saying 0 is now the recommended amount.
Yeah.
So that's like, go ahead.
It truly is. It's crazy. Like how my view of in moderation before going back to school and learning that. And of course, I think that if you ask any health professional, as you said, they'd probably say don't, but, like my view of moderation was like not getting wasted. Like to me, that was drinking in moderation. Like if I, left and really wasn't that drunk, I was like, oh yeah, that was drinking in moderation. Not having any idea of like what drinking in moderation is from a health standpoint. I think everyone really thinks of it as like from a drunk standpoint.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, actually, that's a really, really valid point that I think you're the first person who's actually said that, but it's so true. We consider, are we drunk or not? if we're not, we're fine. If we're drunk, we're it's bad. Or it's like, and then you feel remorse and guilty the next day, possibly because you got drunk.
Yeah.
And I look at it as, I probably looked at that, I did, as the same way. I looked at it the same way, actually. And this is the first time I've thought about this. Sorry, you just blew my mind. I'm like, oh my God, this is such a great way of explaining it, that I was like, if I went to a party and had 2 glasses of wine and came home, I would be like, look at me, so healthy. All right. Or I would feel angry that I couldn't have more because I had to drive, or like, not angry, not always, but sometimes I'd be like, well, I can only have 1 glass of wine because I have to drive. Right. And I think I'm very similar in that sense. I think a lot of people do consider it that way. Smart.
Yeah. And like you said, it's just because no one is teaching us from that health standpoint. So yeah, my brain has just been going the whole time that you've been talking. But now that we've kind of talked about so many of the negative things, I would love to hear, like, after you eliminated alcohol, like, how did it improve your health and wellness?
So I have to say, like, there are so many things that you don't even realize can happen to you. You think you're gonna give up alcohol, and you're gonna, it's gonna help you feel better in the mornings when you wake up, and you're not gonna feel as groggy, and you're not gonna feel as tired and whatever. And it's just like 1,000 times that are, all the things that come your way. So number one, I feel like it took a while, it took a couple of months, and it takes quite a while if you have a drink of wine every day, or 2 glasses of wine every day for your, like, 20 years, or more, like more glasses of wine at times than others. It takes a lot of time for it to come out of your system. So, we're, again, not talking about the negative stuff, but the first week or 2, you're like, look at me, I feel great. And then you're like, I hate this. This sucks. Cause like you're no matter how you look at it, it is an addiction. Everybody's slightly addicted to alcohol in some way, even if you only have 1 glass of wine a day, whatever. So it takes time for all that to come out of your system. And you slowly start to get more clear-headed. You slowly start to get more less cranky. And I would say all of a sudden you start looking around and start realizing that you can have fun and you can feel joy even more than when you had a drink in your hand. So the biggest thing for me is that I have figured out how to find happiness and joy in the moment, and connecting and being present. And that's like the biggest part of this. And you see a lot of this on Instagram. I got sober, and then I'm so present and I'm connected, and I don't want to minimize that, because it's so true. It seems a little bit hokey when people present it on Instagram, like, look at me, I'm so present. But it truly is. Like, your eyes have finally opened. If you've had a heavy drinking problem, or anything that made your brain foggy, and all of a sudden it's like the curtain has lifted, the fog is gone, and you can actually see life and the world. And it's like, oh wow, so this is what it's like. So this is what the world is like, right? Because your senses aren't getting dulled by a substance. And there are moments definitely of like, I wish everybody's having a glass of wine, feeling that FOMO. But you become just really more, I feel like I really connect with people. I can have a conversation. And I remember it the next day, and I remember the time with my kids, and, just being alive. It seems so silly, but being alive and finally understanding myself was another huge benefit. Feeling this, being present and connected, leads to you being connected with yourself.
Yeah, no, I really resonate with that, because I feel like the more I go without drinking, the less I miss it. And like, I'm very big into music and concerts. All my friends know that, but I don't really go out to bars a lot, but I love going to concerts, and I love being able to remember everything, to like experience it with my friends and to like know all of the songs that they're playing. And like when I look back at videos, it's like, oh, I remember that vividly. I remember who I was with, what I was doing, not like, oh, I wish I actually remembered seeing them perform that, or like completely don't remember the night. And it's really refreshing now, and like wake up feeling great.
Yeah. There's oh my gosh, I'm trying to Blair, sobriety activist on Instagram, Blair. She told me a story once. We were chatting and she said that her husband had bought her tickets to a Kevin Hart show and she doesn't remember any of it. Like, can you imagine going to a Kevin? And she said she had been looking forward to it for months because she loved Kevin Hart. She'd been looking forward to it for so long and doesn't remember a thing because she pre-gamed, drank at the show heavily and like doesn't remember anything. And I always feel so sad when I hear that because like, now she obviously can go to these things and remember them, but I'm like, how many moments did I miss in my life because I was like, pre-gaming and then, getting somewhere already completely like oblivious to being, and unconnected to myself and the people I was with.
Yeah, I know. And then also the dangers of blacking out and or not remembering that stuff too, especially for women. It can be scary. So I'm curious. So on your Instagram, you discuss the toxic relationship between alcohol and athletics. As a runner, could you talk about what this relationship was like for you and how you see it show up in many different athletes?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. This is like one of my favorite topics of all time because so I have been a runner my whole life and I've actually recently stopped running for just my knees can't take it anymore. But one of the biggest things that I remember when I was younger and running is that I would run races and you'd get to the finish line and there would be like a bagel, a banana, and your silver foil or a medal or whatever and some water. And then you would go home and that's it, right? And like all the way through my teens, any cross country race, whatever. As I slowly went through my 20s and 30s, races started getting, this is the same for cycling and mountain biking and other things. It's not just running; it's happening across the spectrum. But there started being like beer sponsors of races, and then there started being beer at the finish line, and then there started being beer runs, and then there was the 4-minute beer mile, and then there was the or whatever that like it just got so crazy. Here in Toronto, there's a Bud Light. Oh no, it's a Mick Ultra, the Mick Ultra night run. And at the end of your run, at the end of this race, after you've exhausted your body and pushed yourself to do your very best in this run, you get 2 tickets to drink. You get 2 Mick Ultras because they're low calorie, but they still have alcohol in them. And so you're dehydrated. So what alcohol dehydrates? I think everybody knows that. I don't have to preach about that, but you're dehydrated from racing. And you should be drinking water with electrolytes, but instead you're pounding back 2 beers and then you're going to have more, right? 2 beer tickets after a race, like 2, which is even beyond like, okay, for men, fine, 2, women are supposed to only have 1, but they're giving you 2 beer tickets after a race and you're dehydrating yourself even more. And then of course you can buy more if you want. And they've got a beer garden at the end of this race and they give you a medal. I wish I had it. It's upstairs, but it's got a beer opener. The medal is actually a beer opener. And it is so offensive now. Like I didn't see it because I was in it. And so I didn't see it until now. I see it's so offensive. Yoga, wine and yoga. There's this big event in New York where you can go and really connect with your they say connect with your core memories. And I'm like, that is actually misinformation because alcohol removes core memories. And so it's like you're going to this big yoga event and they give you wine to drink while you're doing yoga. So here, going back to what I was talking about earlier, your body gets dopamine, you feel good and you feel good doing yoga, but then your body's being flooded with dynorphin and cortisol and all these things that create more anxiety. So you're hitting the mat and you're supposed to be creating a relaxing, yoga is all about being one with your breath and your body and really you know, being relaxed and gentle with yourself, and you're harming yourself while you're doing that. It's so counterintuitive. You know, I know this is silly, but I've seen, you know, at the end of Formula One races and, you know, other big events like that, you know, an athlete drinking out of a shoe. Oh, there was an ultra run and an athlete poured champagne into a shoe and drank it after running 100 miles or something. And I'm like, are you fucking crazy? Sorry, I don't know if I can swear on here. Okay. The one where I dropped the F-bomb. So, so I think the idea of the pursuit of athleticism, whether you are a weekend jogger, somebody who's practicing yoga, or whether you're an elite athlete, it's out of control with the idea that how intertwined alcohol is with sports now. And I kind of parallel this to smoking and nicotine. So here in Toronto, we used to have the Du Maurier Tennis Open. Do you guys have Du Maurier in the US? It's a cigarette brand.
I don't think so.
No. Okay. So Du Maurier is a big cigarette brand here in Canada. And they used to sponsor for 2 decades. They sponsored the biggest tennis tournament in Canada. You know, like Serena and Venus Williams came to this tournament, right? So about 10 years ago, somebody woke up and said, why is a cigarette company sponsoring a tennis tournament? And I think the same thing is going to start happening with athletics, because with alcohol in athletics. And my last point about this is that there's a lot of non-alcoholic beer and non-alcoholic breweries out there right now that are starting to grow, like Athletic Brewing Company. I'm trying to think of a couple. There's lots of them out there. I'm not going to mention them all, but there's a few that are very, very specifically geared, like their branding is geared towards athletes and athletics. And I love that because apparently the Japanese marathon team has drank non-alcoholic beer after training leading up to the Olympics. I don't know if this is true or not, but this is sort of one of those urban legends you hear, that the Japanese Olympic marathon team hydrates after training with non-alcoholic beer. And I kind of like that idea, right? Because it is hydrating. It has, you know, it's because there's no alcohol in it, the water, you know, you're able to absorb the water. Your body can absorb the water, but also the yeast and the hops have nutrients in them that your body discards when you're drinking fully alcoholic beer. So it's like a bonus.
Yeah, and hops are actually really good for you, which is how a lot of people like can try and get away with saying beer is really good for you.
Yeah, there's this whole thing about like you know, well, women used to drink in medieval times, women used to drink beer in order to like have breast milk, like when they were like nursing, so they could lactate. But let's talk about the levels of alcohol in medieval beer. It was probably 1%. Let's be honest. There was no like fancy filtration and like stainless steel tanks at that time. So the benefits they were getting for their lactation was actually from the hops, not from the alcohol.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's interesting too, kind of thinking back to what you said earlier, how your body metabolizes the alcohol first. So when you're an athlete, if you do eat after like a race and your muscles have been working, your muscles are taking up the energy of the alcohol and not the food. So that's what they're using to kind of repair themselves. And I'm assuming that probably slows down the repair process.
It slows down. Yes, it slows down the repair process because your body's gonna, you know, it's going to burn the ethanol first. Mm-hmm. And because there's no nutrients in that, your muscles are going even longer without getting the protein and the energy that they actually need to repair. So 100%, it's like, you know, you've trained for, I'm going to give you a personal example because I feel like this is what's going to resonate the most with people. I trained for 3 or 4 months for a really hard half marathon. And it like, I was so devastated at the end of it because I hadn't done well. It's a long story. It turned out I had really high blood pressure, but I didn't know that when I was training. So that was one of the reasons that I hadn't done well. And so I basically bombed this half marathon, and it was a small field of runners, and I came in like third last because I was so like, but I had trained for 3 or 4 months for this, and I pushed my body so hard in this race that I almost collapsed at the finish line. So I was unhealthy to begin with, but then I pushed myself so hard because I'm like, I trained for so long. I was so sad. I went home and I drank an entire bottle of oh my God, Veuve Clicquot champagne in misery. Like, oh, poor me. Let's drink this whole bottle. And the next day I literally couldn't walk. I could not get it. My muscles would not work because I didn't eat anything. I was so sad, so mad at myself. And so it wasn't my fault. I had trained, but I had some health issues that I didn't know about. And I decided to drown my misery with a bottle of Veuve Clicquot and not eat anything. And I got up in the morning and I was so sick and dehydrated. I started throwing up, not just for like, one bottle of wine is about 5 glasses. And I think I think most people can handle like 3 or 4 glasses of wine, maybe even 5, without being completely sick. So it wasn't from drinking the bottle of wine necessarily. It was from being super dehydrated because I was already dehydrated, and I drank that champagne, and then I went to bed. I like didn't eat anything, didn't drink any water. That was stupid. That was a really stupid mistake. But I mean, can you imagine the torture that I put my body through?
Yeah. I mean, and it's funny because I feel like people at the end of races are like, oh, drinking, get your carbs, like kind of like you're saying, you get your bagel, you get your banana, you get your carbs. So, but yeah, the way that you're explaining it in your example is just proof that that's not quite the carbs that you need to be getting. And I think, as you were talking about athletes, like I know my cousin is in the NFL, and he was on season 1 of the podcast, and he was talking about when he's in an intense training regimen, the first thing he does is not drink at all.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, that's like step 1. That's not even all the other good things I do to support my body. It's like, that's the number 1 thing. And then we'll keep adding some support. So it seems counterintuitive to have all of these races and events. And I mean, even going to sporting games, tailgates,
right.
and inside the venue and everything, like pretty much every athletic event, whether it's you're the participant or you're the viewer, revolves around alcohol in some capacity, but the athletes aren't even drinking.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point, is that I'd say, of all the athletes I know, and like that's a really great example. I don't know anyone in the NFL, but I do know hockey players, and true athletes don't, they know how harmful it is because they can feel it. They're so in tune and so in touch with their own physical health and limitations that they can feel the effect of one glass of wine, right? Long distance runners, like elite marathoners, there's a few women that I don't follow anymore on Instagram because they're like regular marathoners, and they're like kind of like a long distance running influencers type thing, but they talk about drinking a lot, and I'm like, real like marathoners and runners don't drink at all when they're training because or if at all during the year, they hardly drink at all because they know they can feel the impact it has on their performance. And when every day matters, when you're training for a race or something that's at that high of a level, you can't waste any of those training moments. So I was just thinking too about there's a ton of beer runs. So in Toronto and lots of places in the US as well, I know have these like, come out Wednesday at 5 o'clock and we're going to run to beer. And the group gets together and runs, and then they run to a craft brewery, and then everybody gets loaded. And I'm like, I don't know, that seems so counterintuitive to me. The running, it wasn't like that when I was growing up. So this is a recent thing, I think, in the last decade, especially since running has become extremely popular, over the last decade too, and other sports as well. I'm not in the cycling world, but I do know that mountain biking and then trail riding and stuff, and that has a heavy beer scene as well. So
it's crazy. But I would love to know, switching gears just a little bit. since that you have, started some good, clean fun, how did that come about, and how have you been able to generate content for that and all of that good stuff?
Yeah, so it's been right from the beginning. I could see that there wasn't, especially here in Canada, there wasn't anybody writing about the rise of non-alcoholic, truly writing fully about non-alcoholic drinks and the non-alcohol, like an alcohol-free. There's lots of recovery websites and blogs and things like that about sobriety, but my approach is a little bit different. I don't consider myself sober. I don't say I am sober. I always say I lead an alcohol-free lifestyle. I have an alcohol-free lifestyle, not because I want to minimize the sobriety and the effort and some people really like to that they identify with that. That's just not how I identify with myself. So I wanted to create this community and this narrative that we all need to rethink drinking. So from a societal level and from on a personal level, it's not healthy how much we talk about alcohol, how much we drink, how everything revolves around it. But from a personal level too, bringing that awareness of drinking, how drinking is so harmful for us, and especially women, and the mommy wine culture. So I wanted to build a space for that. But it was really important that one of the pillars of Some Good Clean Fun is non-alcoholic drinks, because that was the thing for me that when I really truly was like, okay, so when I read that book, This Naked Mind, I don't have like I sort of have a zero day one, or like a countdown. I'm not going to get into that but really truly when I decided I'm going to do this, I really leaned into the non-alcoholic drinks. And so I was kind of where you two are probably. Maybe Melissa, you said you haven't drank for a really long time. So, and Kathleen, you're sober curious. So I was, instead of saying I was sober curious, I would say I'm rethinking drinking. And I did that for probably 7 or 8 months. But the way that I did that and was able to manage was by creating mocktails, going to the grocery store and looking for ingredients, like, doing all these things that would allow me to have something in my hand to drink, because you're trying to stop a physical habit. It's a mental habit, but it's also something that's physical. We can't forget that no matter how much work you do here, you still are going to feel like you want to have something to drink. You want to be part of the experience. And so I really thought it was so interesting that there wasn't a lot of alcohol-free spirits, beer, or wine out there 2 years ago. And so it was a year and a half ago when I launched April. So I stopped drinking, or like started this journey April 2020, like right at the beginning of COVID. But then launched Some Good Clean Fun April 2021. And there wasn't a lot of products out there. And in the last year and a half, it has absolutely exploded. Like there was no Gia, there was no Kin Euphorics, there was like none of those existed a year and a half ago. So if you can believe it, it's just like exploded. And I wanted to document that. I wanted to start documenting what wine is good, what spirits are good, what to use, how to make drinks with them. And there's always some tweaks. Like you can't do an exact replica of an alcoholic recipe, because there are certain things that you need to add in, like when you're using a non-alcoholic spirit. There's lots of non-alcoholic wine out there now. Some of it is really terrible and some of it is great. So, I wanted to document that. So that was sort of like this idea that I had back in April. And it's been amazing. So number one, I've got, quite a few people have come forward to help me write this. So I've got a beer contributor who does non-alcoholic beer. I've had a couple of different contributing writers who are talking about the lifestyle aspect of it over the past year and a half, who have really contributed things from a, maybe nutritional perspective, and kind of anything that I need out there. I'm always able to find somebody to kind of contribute that, because I'm not a doctor, I'm not a healthcare practitioner, but I do really feel like there are other people who can contribute to this conversation of like what's good for us and what's not. It's summer right now, so there's not a lot of the content has slowed down a little bit over the summer, but we're ramping up again in September with more health information, not health information, but more lifestyle content, less drinks, more lifestyle content, I think. And then the thing that's really special to me, which we've started, and it's had a bumpy start, but I really want to continue doing this, and I'd love to include both of you in this. We have a series called Inspiring Women Who Are Rethinking Drinking, and we're telling women's stories who are rethinking drinking, who are, you know, approaching this idea of like, I'm rethinking the role alcohol plays in my life. It's not sober stories. And not to minimize that, there's a lot of women out there who are like, I'm sober, I went through recovery, and I'm, you know, so proud of all those women. I think what I'm trying to do is profile women who are like, I don't really know if I want to drink anymore, and then, you know, rethinking it, and here's where I'm at. And so one of the most recent was a Holistic with Kristen, who she's a holistic nutritionist from California, and she's, you know, she's on the same similar journey to both of you. You know, not sure that it's she can't live her best life with it and realizes how good she feels without it. So we're trying to profile more of those stories, because I think the social proof needs to be there before more women say, okay, yeah, no, I don't want to do this anymore. There needs to be social proof. Veganism, you know, same thing. 20 years ago, nobody was a vegan, and you know, you might have had that weird neighbor who was a vegan, and oh, she's a vegan, right? And now it's like everybody's so proud to be vegan, because we know like how harmful consuming that much meat can be for us. And we all need plant-based foods. And so I think that conversation has shifted. And so that's where I'm at right now with drinking too. I think in 20 years, you know, I'm going to be that. Right now I'm that weirdo who's like, you shouldn't drink, it's not good for you. And and 20 years from now, I think people will be in a different place. And it has to start somewhere, though. It has to start through telling the stories of other women who are like, yep, I feel so much better now that I'm not drinking.
Yeah, I think that's so inspiring. I love that you're doing that and doing it like kind of similar stories to us, because I feel like whenever I tell people I'm not drinking and they're asking me questions, they're like, yeah, I haven't really been drinking as much, and I'm trying not to drink as much. They're like, oh, okay, maybe I can do it. Maybe I can go to this concert and not drink, or maybe I can just go to a bar, and even if it's just one drink for tonight, like starting slowly. I think it's important to like still like to share those stories, because it gives people like the confidence and the courage to try it out for themselves.
Yeah, I had a girlfriend who I haven't seen in a really long time. She was, you know, texting me about what should she buy, you know, this and that, or she's trying to get pregnant. So she's going through some fertility struggles. And she said, you know, I just wanted to tell you I love your content, not because I'm not drinking, because I'm trying to get pregnant, but like I'm now checking myself when I'm going to grab a bite with somebody to eat, I'm checking myself and saying like, do I really need to have a glass of wine now? And she's like, it's really helpful. Your content is really helpful. And that means the world to me, because that's exactly what is like, just check yourself for a minute. You know, do you want to be present with that person and enjoy it and feel good after dinner? Or do you want to have one or two glasses of wine, get in your car and drive home? Dangerous. Don't do that. But also feeling like garbage once those two glasses of wine have kind of worn off, and you're at home and you're not, you know, not feeling great about yourself. Right. And so anyway, sorry, I digress, but I love that idea of like, you know, checking yourself.
Yeah. And I think a lot of it has to do with also the intention behind like, why are you having that drink? Like, are you having it to like mask something, or just for liquid courage or whatever? And it definitely helps with the, like when you start rethinking it, like, oh, I can do this without alcohol. But I'm curious for like listeners who are hearing this and like, oh, mocktails, like what would you recommend is like your favorite like go-to mocktail, or maybe brand, or something that's easy for a listener to make on their own or buy somewhere?
Yeah. So I just had a really great Chardonnay called Luminara. It's from California. You can order it on their website. I know this is going to sound weird, but it's a very pineapple, like tropical fruit forward wine, but it's so good with Asian takeout. So I had really spicy Asian takeout, and I had this wine with it. It was really good. Another really great brand of wine. It's a little bit harder to find, but it's from Germany, and the winery is spelled Leitz, Lights, and they make a non-alcoholic line of wines called 1Y0, and their rosé and their Riesling are just incredible, like really great. Red wine. I know all the women listening are probably wondering, is there a good non-alcoholic red wine? I just had there's a brand from the UK called Naughty, Noughty. And the New York Times actually just reviewed this wine and said, this is a non-alcoholic red wine to take to the party. And that was huge. And because it's like, this is a New York Times wine reviewer. And so I would say absolutely, it's an absolutely incredible red wine. It's called Naughty Rouge. And it is now going to be in rotation in my house. I mean, right now I'm drinking a lot of Sauvignon Blancs, actually. What was the one that I just, I don't think you can't get it in the US, but it's Gateau Negro Sauvignon. Is like, amazing. Amazing. It's from Chile. It's like so good. I like, 2 or 3 glasses, you're like, I gotta stop now. Because there is like, it is still calories. It's not 0 calories. So, but, okay, so that's wine. And then for spirits, there's a couple of spirits brands that I really love. Lyres is one of them, Lyres. They're pretty big in the US. You can get them anywhere. They've got a really full line of spirits. So I think there's 15. They have 15 or 16 different products. I don't have the exact number, but Lyres is Lyres.com. You can use my code SarahKate15 if you are going to order. That's Sarah with an H, Sarah, Kate 15. And they have every type of spirit you might want. So they've got rum, they've got whiskey, they've got, tequila, and you can make a really easy, my favorite of all. So an easy mocktail to make is to use a spritz, to make a spritz. And so you can use the Lyres Italian spritz product, or you can use any type of like Italian bitter. There's a lot of non-alcoholic bitters out there. If you just Google non-alcoholic Italian bitters, you'll find our non-alcoholic Aperol. You can make a beautiful Aperol spritz with one of those, just 1 or 2 ounces of that and some non-alcoholic sparkling wine or club soda or grapefruit soda. You don't have to use sparkling wine. You can just use some like grapefruit soda. And it makes a really great, easy spritz. And so you can use any brand, but really like my go-to, if it's hot outside and I want to sit on the patio, I make a spritz. It's like 2 ingredients, easy peasy, and you've got a like beautiful, elevated, non-alcoholic cocktail.
Oh, I'm going to try that for sure.
There's lots of recipes on somegoodcleanfun.com. So if anybody wants to pick up more.
I definitely will. Before we get to our rapid fire closing questions, I feel like this last question kind of fits in, but what is something that you would say to someone who's listening to this episode and has been thinking or rethinking drinking? Like what is something that you would say to them if they're just in that headspace of like, I've kind of been thinking about this and now I've listened to this episode and I'm like really thinking about this. What advice could you give them?
I would say take that first step. But then the most important thing is not just taking that first step. So do it. Absolutely do it. You're never going to regret doing it ever, first of all. But second is, if you decide that you are going to, if there's a moment and you do have a drink again, you didn't fail. Don't quit your journey. Look at it as, and I learned this from Annie Grace, the author of This Naked Mind. If you take a math test and you get 1 question wrong, you still get 99%, right? So if you look at all the days, and I used to do this calculation all the time, this is how I got through the first 8 months of rethinking drinking. I would actually mark down out of like 92 days, how many glasses of wine how many days did I have 1 glass of wine or whatever? And it would always be like, 97% or 98%. I'm like, I'm passing my test. So look at it that way. Don't look at it as like, oh my God, I had a glass of wine at my anniversary dinner. I failed. I have to give up. I can never do this. It's too hard. And don't start the clock over again at day 1. That's another thing. People are always like, another day 1. Don't do that. You had your day 1 already. Look forward. Just tick it off. Okay, this is day 93. It doesn't have to be in a row. That's my advice. Like, just start. Take the first step. And then if you slip, don't make a big deal of it. Just keep moving forward. You're not a failure. It's not you. It's an addictive substance, and you are stronger than that thing.
I love that. That's amazing. And I think that's very reassuring and comforting people. For sure. So we have a few last questions. Rapid fire questions I'd like to ask.
Great.
Kind of similar to our last one, but what's one piece of advice you'd give to someone starting their health journey today?
Do what feels right. Do what feels right for you, and you'll know what feels right when you start taking that first step.
Love it. And what do you think the future of health looks like?
I actually think the future of health is incredibly complex, but I think that the future of health is going to be more democratized, and that everybody has their own. It's going to be more common for everybody to have their own customized health plan.
Love that. Yes, let's hope so. And then our last one is, since this is Connecting the Dots, can you tell our listeners how they can connect with you or where they can follow you on social media?
Yeah, so I'm on social media. I'm on Instagram in two places. Some Good Clean Fun is myself, my own personal account, and then Rethinking Drinking is where we post more of the recipes and the delicious mocktails. And you can find me on TikTok at Mom Rethinking Drinking. Is me, Mom Rethinking Drinking. And then my website again is somegoodcleanfun.com. And I have a weekly newsletter that comes out on Fridays. And I usually do wine reviews and mocktail recipes and things. So if you're not keeping up with the website, every Friday I send out a newsletter with those things in it so that you can connect back with the community. And Facebook, we're just Some Good Clean Fun on Facebook.
Perfect. Thank you. And we'll link all that in the show notes for our listeners too.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here and for sharing your journey and your story and giving our listeners so many nuggets of advice, from recipes or how to start or how to find a community. I think it's all going to be very impactful.
Thank you so much for having me today. Honestly, this was really great, and I love being able to share the joy of this. And I wish both of you the best of luck with your journeys, because it sounds like you're on the right track and you're asking the right questions and thinking about the right things. So keep me posted on how that's going.
Yeah,
we will. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Connecting the Dots. If there was something that resonated with you, or you simply enjoyed the show, please share it with a friend, leave a 5-star rating and written review, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts so you can be the first to know when a new episode is released. And if you'd like to further support us, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow the show on Instagram at connectingthedots.podcast on both platforms. We're also on TikTok at Connecting the Dots Podcast.
We have intentionally curated resource guides that go with every episode to give you the tools, resources, and information you need to make tangible changes at home. You can purchase these guides at kathleencarney.com/resources. If you would like to work with me directly, you can also go to kathleencarney.com/services and book a free discovery call to decide which service is right for you. Make sure you follow me at Kathleen Carney Wellness on Instagram and TikTok.
And I'm Melissa Chamis on Instagram and The Lazy Yogi separated by underscores on TikTok. And we'll link all this information in the show notes to make it easier for you.
We appreciate your continued support and look forward to hanging with you next week.